Hi, this is The Philosophical Angle, defining concepts in current media, and I am your host, Chris Angle. I am the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Nature of Aesthetics. Along with me are 2 panelists, our regular discussants, Professor Mark Brennan. He's a professor at the Stern School of Business at New York University, and he's also the American editor of the Quarterly Review of London, established 1809. Also with us is Rick Samuelson. Rick graduated from Yale, has an MBA from Wharton, an MA from Tufts. He's retired from the investment banking industry and is currently a venture capitalist. Good to see you guys.
Hi, Chris.
Thank you.
The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of the concepts being used in current media and compare the essence of the concept with the usage and circumstances in which they are being used. This week, we're going to discuss the turmoil in Syria. So let's get to it. First, as everybody knows in the news, Syria is foremost right there on the front page. And with it comes the question, do we do something about it? And as the administration has hinted, actually not hinted, expressly stated, that they're considering using retaliation forces because of Syria's uses of this gas. So with this comes the possibility of foreign entanglement, which the Founding Fathers warned us against. So how do we decide when to involve ourselves? In other words, when does the U.S. involve itself in a foreign entanglement? And of course, this would be if the United States does use some force and involve itself in the Syria or the Syrian turmoil and conflict, then we are involving ourselves in a foreign entanglement, and we have to decide, is it important enough to do so? We have to make a decision. If the importance is to the administration that the use of gassing its civilians is drastic enough so that we have to make a decision to forcibly enter and involve ourselves in the turmoil. Okay, so what do we do? Well, you either make an action or you ignore it. But if you ignore it, sometimes out of ignoring it comes a forcible action in the future, such as World War II. We kind of ignored what was happening in Europe and Asia, and eventually we had to enter, or we were attacked. And our inaction, that is, we allowed our armed forces to dissipate before World War II. I think it was down to less than 2% of GDP. And suddenly we found ourselves in a huge turmoil. Well, presently in the Middle East, we've got this tremendous problem entering. And do we become involved? And when we involve ourselves, we have to use the consideration of self-interest. So, with self-interest, does U.S. have a self-interest in entering? But there are other types of determinations. In other words, other types of priorities in which we might decide to enter. We have the ethical considerations. Is it ethical for us to involve ourselves with this conflict? Ethics is the appropriate dispensation of respect, and which is used to cooperate, because we consider the others important. And when we consider somebody else important, we consider them because we consider them important because we want to produce something, and we require their cooperation to do so. So we produce production is a sacrifice, and we sacrifice in order to get that reward of the production, because it is good for us. Goods and services that we make, we can use in our lives, and that's good for us. But we always have to weigh that against the risk of the production, the risk of the sacrifice. Because all sacrifice is made up of risk, the knowledge and time and effort that a person will use in making a decision, in doing an action, such as producing something, such as a good or a service. So you have your ethical considerations, but then also you have your aesthetical considerations. Examples of aesthetical consideration is honor, charity, justice. The great literature is fraught with such examples of heroes entering a problem, entering a fray, entering turmoil where they didn't have to, for whatever aesthetic reason that they had at the time. We can go throughout literature and name all the heroes, and name many of the heroes that populate great literature, such as the Black Knight entering the fray in the list and saving Wilfred of Ivanhoe. Didn't have to, but he did. Okay, so with these considerations in mind of self-interest, aesthetics, and ethical considerations, let's go to our guys, our discussants, and let's apply this and see what we come up with for Syria. Should we be involved in Syria? What do you think, guys?
Well, if you want me to go first, I think this is a different situation than we find in Egypt. It does rise to the scale of a humanitarian catastrophe. There are over 100,000 casualties. I don't think anyone has the exact number, but it's a very big number. I think the way that the administration has handled it is a little foolish. Only a couple of thousand apparently were killed with poison gas, and now it's suddenly become an imperative for the United States to become directly involved. Well, that kind of makes a mockery of the other 100,000 that were killed by conventional means. I think to put the emphasis on the gas as opposed to the number of casualties sends the wrong message. But leaving that aside, it appears that has been useful to the extent that other allies have decided they want to act, including France and England and others. The worrying thing about this situation is that the regional actors are clearly very involved on both sides, including Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and so forth. So this has the potential to metastasize into a broader regional conflict. And it appears to be moving in that direction, and therefore it passes the test of having a national interest for the United States. Whether the United States should commit troops or not is another issue. I would say probably not. The United States is overstretched at the moment. But the United States should get involved. It's probably late, and much of the damage to our ally relations and to Syria itself, to say nothing of the people who've been killed, could have been avoided if we'd acted earlier. But here we are where we are. So I would support the United States committing at least equipment to this, even if they simply act through allies like France, England, or others.
Okay, Mark, any response?
Well, again, there's no threat to American security, so there's no grounds to enter on that. No reason to enter on those grounds. You will find out sooner rather than later, or it will be suppressed until after the fact, that this is yet another false flag operation like the Gulf of Tonkin, the sinking of the Maine, and all that. All the data coming out recently from the chemical weapons experts is pointing to the fact that people were in the area where the bodies were found and carrying the bodies around, screaming, "Oh, my poor children were killed." You can't go into an area where chemical weapons have been killed for at least 1 week. These people went in the next day. Complete false flag operation. And remember, we are now joining with the side of Al-Qaeda and the rebels, in bringing down Bashar Assad in some moronic, our latest crusade by our Pulitzer and Nobel Peace Prize winning President Barack Hussein Obama has decided, to show his mettle at the urging of people like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Douglas Wurmser, etc. In the United States, remaking the world in this democratic ideal. This will go down again as another moronic foreign policy move by this country based on a false flag operation where no American national interest was at risk, and more importantly, no threat to American security.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and further, it's kind of a Sunni versus Shiite type of conflict, where there's really no guy that we should be rooting for that I can figure out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the few times I agree with Sarah Palin, let Allah sort it out. This is really not our fight. Let these people, kill each other. The fact that chemical weapons were used, can you spell napalm? I can. So I don't know why we're getting so upset about chemical weapons. There are millions of people walking around Vietnam today with birth defects from napalm. So, getting our panties in a twist about chemical weapons, a little hypocritical.
Are there any? Is there a side that we should be on, or that we can root for here? Such as, is there a non-secular body that is got an interest in the turmoil there in Syria, or is it just?
Well, personally, I'm pulling for the Christians. When this attack goes down, they will be the first ones killed and murdered. Pull for your own kind. I'm rooting for the Christians.
Is there a significant Christian population in Syria?
There was, just like there was in Iraq until we screwed that up.
Egypt too.
Right. And diminishing.
All these, Chris, we never consider number one, the unintended consequences of our actions, and number two, we never have a plan for afterwards. So we're going to go in, knock out a couple of runways, drop a couple bombs, which is no big deal because they're 10,000 miles away. When people drop bombs on us, it's a big deal. And then we're going to not have any idea of what to do after we do this.
Well, should Bashar Assad be taken off the head of the regime there? After all, he represents Iran and Iran's interests, which Iran is trying to grow in the region. Would it be in our interest to topple him personally and his cadre of Shiite terrorists?
The American national interest argues for a balance of power in every region. We've already screwed up the balance of. We had Saddam Hussein, not to be confused with Barack Hussein Obama, but Saddam Hussein was a nice counterweight to Iran. We screwed that up. Now we're going to screw this up, having Bashar Assad as something of a counterweight against other Shiite forces in the area. We're going to remove that. So we're doing everything the realist foreign policy tells us not to do, which is to fight or to manipulate the situation for a balance of power. We're doing everything to screw that up.
Would it be possible, or could we advocate a strike on the chemical weapons themselves? Assad is their leader, and destroy the leader and destroy those chemical weapons. Would that be a good idea to enter?
The rebels are the ones with the chemical weapons, not Bashar Assad. You'll see that soon enough.
My understanding, Chris, is they're being hidden in various apartment building basements, and it'd be very difficult, rather impractical.
Okay, so it's been strategically spread out throughout the nation, or throughout the populous areas of the nation?
That's my understanding. I don't know if anyone has a really clear view, but I don't think Assad's as stupid as the U.S. might hope in that he wouldn't concentrate all of his chemical weapons in one location anyway.
And Mark, did you just say that possibly the chemical gas is not being used by the Assad side, but by his enemies?
This was another false flag operation, and those chemical weapons were launched by the rebels.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. So really, no side really knows really factually what's going on. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, the U.S. government doesn't care what's going on, Chris. We have an agenda. We have a global agenda, and nothing will stop our global agenda. And our global agenda is to spread democracy with all the ardor that the Jacobins did it in France.
Well, that's a good question. What is American foreign policy presently? Is there one? And what is it? What is the foreign policy emanating from our Pulitzer or our Nobel Peace Prize president? Does anybody?
Withdrawal.
Can anybody define it?
Yeah, it's withdrawal.
Withdrawal.
Diminish the size of the military and withdraw from as many conflicts as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Rick, how can you say that when we're going charging into Syria?
Well, that may or may not happen, but the broader context, and he's blaming it on, of course, Republican cuts to the budget, but in the broader context, Obama's overriding objective is to reduce the size of the military and reduce its footprint globally, and that is broadly speaking what is happening. I think the whole thing with Obama is entirely political. He said a year ago, if poison gas was used in Syria, that would be a red line that would have to be crossed. And now, if he doesn't do something or appear to do something, he'll look politically like a fool, and Republicans will make fodder of that. I think that's the primary motive that drives him. I don't think there's any really strategic objective here. What can he achieve? I mean, to my mind, the only reason for using any military force or providing any military force in this situation is to maximize the chance of stability. And it appears if other actors, like our allies, are willing to act toward that end, I just don't see anything wrong with providing some support there to ensure that this crisis doesn't spill over into other countries in the region, because it is a fairly big one. There are a lot of people being killed.
Well, I thought that the policy emanating from Washington currently was leading from behind, whatever that might mean. I guess that was used in its approach to Libya, and perhaps, although this situation, it doesn't seem that they're going to be leading from behind here. They seem to want to be first in. So is leading from behind a possible policy statement from the administration for dealing with the foreign policy?
I think it is, to the extent that he would prefer to see France dive in there with its troops, and we kind of support them from a distance.
Okay. What about the rest of the Middle East? What are their attitudes toward the Syrian turmoil? Has anybody read anything or have an opinion there? I haven't read.
Saudi Arabia appears to be very alarmed with what's going on. right?
Uh,
They're afraid of Iran. They're afraid of Iranian influence. They see Iranian influence in Syria.
Right.
And they're obviously concerned about the balance of power in the region.
That's right. They're also concerned with.
They're much less concerned with the fact that oil is spiking.
Right. Well,
And I'm sure they're very worried about that.
Chris, I think there's a little bit of a tweak to your earlier question, which is not what should U.S. foreign policy be, but we know what our foreign policy is. We see it every day. The deeper question is, what should American grand strategy be? And that's a conversation we've never had as a country. We just kind of go around the world, as Jonah Goldberg said, throwing crappy little countries against the wall to show them how tough we are. We need to really focus on what our grand strategy should be. Washington laid out a nice strategy. It was followed by numerous American political leaders for centuries, literally centuries, and then we became these Jacobin Democrats who decided to spread global democracy, and it's done nothing but get us in trouble since World War II.
So, did you just give us a foreign policy by which the nation should conduct itself within?
I think Washington laid out some timeless classical.
You mean
strategies.
President Washington, the first
Yes.
president? Okay. All right. So.
Followed by Adams, go not in search of monsters to destroy and all that stuff. These are all trite phrases in the Jacobin mind of Barack Hussein Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Okay. So what would you do about Defense Department?
Sorry?
What should be the U.S. government's position with the Defense Department? In other words, should there be a defense buildup? Should there be a strong Navy? Should there be a strong Air Force? How do we deal with spending on arms if we take an isolationist approach for our Defense Department?
I did not say isolationism, Chris.
That's true. You didn't.
Another bad word that is used to tar non-interventionists, because non-interventionists believe in trade with other countries, educational exchange, cultural exchange. So you shouldn't throw that word around too lightly. However, the first step would probably be to rename the Defense Department back to its original name, which was the War Department, and really call it what it is. And then, we could do an entire show on rationalizing the War Department. It should not be a gigantic corporate welfare system. It should not be a department of the government that sends people around the world and breaks up families and stations guys in Korea, 60 years after the war is ended. That's not what our War Department is supposed to be for. It's to protect the continental United States and the American national interest abroad, not to fight stupid wars that have no impact on either of those.
Okay, so how would we defend ourselves against the Islamic terrorism?
Okay, when was the last time the country was attacked?
Well, that's a difficult question. You mean internally or from external?
The continental United States, when was the last time it was attacked?
You mean by a political entity or by Islamists?
The last time that you would have invoked the War Department to defend us against attack from foreign invaders.
I guess World War II.
Okay, well, I would go with 9/11 as the last time. And you know what our response was at 9/11, Chris? We scrambled 2 airplanes when we were under attack. Now we've got 35,000 guys in Korea, we've got 35,000 guys in Japan, we've got 150,000 guys in Germany. But when we're under attack, when the taxpayers are under attack, what kind of defense do we get? We get 2 planes scrambled. That's not what I'm talking about as a system of defense.
Okay, so can you elaborate? For example, you would. How would we defend ourselves from Islamists who have produced the 9/11 incident and probably some minor incidents since then?
Well, we could start by not giving them visas. That's one step. But,
I'm sorry,
after that,
by not giving them what?
We could start by not giving them visas to come here and stay and live and attack us and kill us.
Okay. We reform our immigration and policy. Okay, well noted. I would propose, though.
We can also give people fewer reasons to want to attack us.
Well, that was kind of the Obama approach.
I'm in Brazil right now, Chris. Brazil has never attacked us. There's no sentiment down here of anybody wanting to attack us. We haven't done anything to piss Brazil off.
Okay. I'm afraid, though, that subject we're going to have to make a separate program, because to make us not vulnerable to attack, I think was what Obama tried to do as president in his so far, and he has failed at that. I don't think that's possible, Mark. I don't think.
No, Chris, there's no perfect system, but we're blessed with 2 oceanic buffers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to do a whole lot to protect ourselves. We just have to stop giving people reasons to want to be mad at us. And honestly, when American soldiers are raping 15-year-old girls in Okinawa, if I were an Okinawan, I'd be pissed off myself.
Okay. Rick, we got about 30 seconds. Any final remarks?
Well, I subscribe to what Mark is saying. I think the United States needs, in a very large world, the ability to project power as needed. I entirely endorse his point on having forward stationed troops in all these places. It's extremely expensive, and it means resources are drawn from, having a larger Navy, for example, that can act, whether it's in the Sea of China or elsewhere in the world, quickly. We are limited by the fact that we maintain all these forward deployed forces in huge numbers. It's a waste of resources.
Okay. Guys, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank for everybody watching the TV program called The Philosophical Angle. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.